I was a sheriff, a permanent sheriff, for 5 or 6 months, and I think I was the only one ever to resign, because this was 20 or 30 years ago, and I had almost no power at all. I could find people, could send them to prison, I could defer sentence, I could use probation. But it was the same people, by and large, who were coming back in front of me. And what they needed was help. There is a class of habitual petty criminal for whom we do nothing. What's the use of sending them to prison when it's no great punishment for them? What's the use of finding them when the very reason they're appearing in front of you is because they had no money, so they stole from somebody? I'm not sure, I'm far from sure that the right way to deal with crime is to punish the criminal.
What are your alternatives? What do you think we should be doing instead?
Education. I think we spend far too much on university education and not enough on primary and preschool education. And that's the time when you can really make ideas stick. I doubt very much if we're ready for another referendum. I think people are satisfied with what we've got at the moment. If independence is the aim, and that is, of course, Nicola's aim, she's going to have an awful lot of people like me dissatisfied with the way we're governed from Westminster, and I'm not sure that they're there yet. A second referendum, if it was lost, by that I mean if the independence cause was lost, and it would put it back for a couple of generations. I think it's too soon. But she's the politician. She can judge things better than I can.
We've just had Brexit.
Yeah. I am shocked at this. Absolutely shocked. The volunteering was accepted for aircrew in 1943. For 1,000 years, the youth of Europe have fought one another, and it was Churchill who said we must do something. We must have a united Europe. We cannot go on fighting one another. He was the first person that I heard talk about a united Europe, and I am so convinced that it's necessary. We cannot go on as separate little entities. We have got to take the broad view and cooperate with the people round about us. Independence for Scotland is to allow us to take our place as an independent country in Europe. It's not to be an Albania perched on the extremities of the Asian and European landmass. It really, that is the strongest argument for holding a referendum on independence, as Nicola is talking about, because the independence referendum, if it makes us independent, means that we're an independent state and can negotiate our position in Europe. I'm not anti-English in any way, but there are some things that I dislike. It seems to me that England still regards itself as a colonial country, as the head of an empire, but of course it's nothing of the kind. It's a very fine country, but it has no right to rule other countries. And I think a great many people in England still think of themselves as imperialists. I don't find this at all in Scotland, and you as a journalist must see that there are no imperialists in Scotland. It seems to me that the greatest export, that Scotland's greatest export has been human beings, and at the same time our greatest and our most important import has been human beings. So that really we're a mongrel race. There are no purebred Scots.
What for you makes someone a Scot?
A Scot is anyone who lives in Scotland and who loves it. Yes, that is the definition of a Scot. The independence of Scotland, as I've already said, is so that it can exercise its position in Europe and through Europe in the world. Because as we've, I think, already decided, we have a different outlook on life in Scotland from England, and I suspect from a great many other countries. And we shouldn't hide that. We shouldn't hide that outlook. But the time has come to leave, just as Ireland has left, and just as Northern Ireland is going to leave. I think that's on the cards in the next 50 years.
Why do you think that?
Because the Sinn Féin is increasing its vote every election.
What most pleases you to remember, and what are you most proud about?
I think my independence. Drawing my own conclusions from each set of facts as they're presented to me. I think that is something which we as humans can do and no other animal can do. And I think too many people draw their accepted conclusions, which I suppose is why you call me a rebel. I'm not sure that the easier path is anything other than physically easy. It's what you think while you're walking along the path that makes the path easy or difficult. And if you're walking along the path thinking this is a lot of nonsense, I shouldn't be here at all, it's not a very comfortable way to live. Better to follow your own views, even if lots of people disagree with them. And also remember, when they disagree, you're hearing other views which affect your own. You See, to classify me as a rebel, I think is wrong, because rebels have causes. I have very few causes. And I do have views which are not accepted views, but then that's what education is all about. We're not a mass of people who say, yes, Nicola's always right. I don't think it's a rebel mind, I think it's a curious mind. I dislike the word nationalist, but I've always been a Scot, and it's always seemed to me that Scotland had a distinct and different voice from England, and it's a voice which should be heard internationally, and I have never changed. That was my view as a schoolboy, and it's still my view. My first action of protest was in 1940 when I was 14, when the King and Queen were coming along, making a visit to Clydeside and Paisley, and we were all marshalled to cheer them as they passed along the main road near the school. I thought that it was an outrage to assume that we would want to cheer them. My objection wasn't so much to the King and Queen as to being conscripted to cheer them. So I got on my bike and went home. And I'm very proud of that. 14. I remember I thought I would get away with it because I thought we would all be told to go home when we were marshalled back to school, and of course I was found to be missing. And I gave my reason as I've given it to you. At the age of 91 and looking back, I feel that I've done far too little. It's not just Trident. At Glen Douglas, there's the largest collection of atomic bombs in Europe. That whole area is a massive armory of atomic bombs. It seems to me to be folly, and I'm assuming that atomic bombs are necessary. It's folly to have them close to one of the most densely populated areas of Western Europe. They're 14 miles from the centre of Glasgow, 17, something like that. I feel that the time for atomic bombs is past. I'm not a passionate anti-atomic bomb person, but I don't think they're necessary any longer. It's like the Americans are faced with almost everyone having a sidearm, a small arm. They can never get rid of them because if they make them illegal, the dishonest people will keep them. It's the same thing with atomic bombs. If we have atomic disarmament, we've got to be awfully sure that everybody disarms and that we are not the only ones who disarm. I think it's unrealistic to say that we shouldn't have them at all. But on the other hand, I don't like them so near a centre of population. I want to be represented in Parliament by somebody who is conscripted to be there because of their sex. It's their ability which should take us there. And there's a dullness about the Scottish Parliament, which I find vexing. I had hoped that there would be much more controversy. We have two members, I think, who have broken away from the Parliament. There's a sameness that I don't like about it. But as an administrative body within the limits of the powers that it's given, it's the government, I think, is doing very well, even if it's terribly dull in the way it's doing it.
What would liven it up, would you hope?
Controversy. They should be saying every time people are critical of the health service, they should be telling us how much money we get and how much money we need and how much money we would have if we had independence. It's almost as if they're afraid of controversy. Parliaments are useless unless there's controversy. And I blame the hitherto established political parties, and not the one hitherto, because they're not providing an opposition. We have no opposition in that Parliament, and unfortunately it's not coming from the backbench of the SNP. I've an awful feeling that the central core of the SNP are doing everything they can to preserve their own jobs and attempting to stop any of the new people who have come forward in the last 10 years, to stop them from taking high office in Parliament. It's understandable, but wrong. And I remember the Oban branch, there were 3 or 4 of us. Now they've got to hire a hall for an ordinary branch meeting. I wish these people, I wish their voices could be heard, and they're not being heard. Basically, I want to see a redistribution of the wealth of our country. I think it's bad for the rich as well as for the poor to have this great gully between the ordinary working people and the wealthy people. And it's getting deeper and wider, as you know.
How do you think the Scottish Parliament could help more or do more?
Tax the rich. They're afraid to do that. That's the answer, is tax the rich and use it to educate the poor. These people who appear in front of, or appeared in front of me as sheriff, they didn't have a chance. I know it's out of fashion to talk about a moral sense, but they had no moral sense because it had never been taught to them. Theft was, and I suspect still is, a way of life, and a justifiable way of life. And I can understand it, and I'm sure you can too, that we live in a consumer society. Everybody has a television set, although you'll notice that there's not one in this room. And everybody sees a rich way of life on television, and they want to take part in it. And you can't do that. They can't do that without money. So they can either steal or do without. it's it, it's unjust. It's wrong. Life's one long celebration if you live it properly. You said I was a rebel, but change isn't a bad thing, you know. We really need change. It can be frightening, but it's necessary.